everybody, welcome back to my channel. So it's obviously been a while since I recorded a video, but you know, the world is crazy. Like I said in my last video, things in the world are a little intense right now. I know a lot of people, like during the, I don't want to say anything that'll get me in trouble with YouTube. I know that for a lot of people, the last 4 or 5 months have been pretty chill. For me, they've been pretty busy, so it took a little bit of some time to handle life, and now I'm back again, and I've got a lot of cases that I want to cover, so I'm just gonna get started. So my plan is to be posting Mystery Monday videos, hopefully every single Monday, but no promises. This is definitely a hobby passion project of mine, not my main gig in life, so I'll be posting as much as I can. I posted in a Facebook group that I'm in about what kind of cases you guys would like to see, and got some really good submissions, so definitely got set for content for the next millennia. But if you guys have any specific cases that you think would be interesting for me to cover, please leave a comment down below and let me know. You can also DM me on my socials, especially my Instagram, and let me know any links and stuff to some cases that you would like to see covered or have really been on your mind lately. This week's case is going to be a little intense, so if you are easily triggered by graphic content, violent content, this may not be the video for you. However, I will link a video down below, my last video, which was about con artists, which is a little bit probably easier to digest, but I still think this story is extremely important and needs to be told. I have not seen anybody else cover this story, and someone reached out to me who was close to one of the victims who asked me if I could cover the story. So that's what we're going to be doing today. Again, viewer discretion is advised on this one. Today we're going to be covering the case of David Middleton, who was the cable guy killer. I know the cable guy, like Larry the Cable Guy, not that type of cable guy. This story, I was researching it and getting ready for this video, and I was just amped up. I was so I had such a visceral reaction to this story, and as we go through, you will find out why I felt that way. So without further ado, let's just jump right into it. David Stephen Middleton was born June 25th of 1961 in Boston, Massachusetts. He had a pretty normal childhood from what we know, and when he was 11, his parents got a divorce. His mom was a stay-at-home mom, and his dad was a police officer for the Boston PD. From what we know, David actually was in gifted classes. He had great grades through elementary school. We don't really know much about high school type of stuff, but we know he was really involved in sports. He even had a basketball scholarship to go to college, so was very successful. And he had a high school sweetheart whose name was Tina, or she went by Tina. Her name was Julia Heredia, I believe. Sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong. So they were high school sweethearts, and as soon as they graduated from high school, they got married. David went to college. He actually did 3 years of college on a sports scholarship, and he was killing it in life. He became a police cadet, kind of following in his father's footsteps. He got lots of different commendations for that. People were like, wow, David, you're such a good police officer. So when David's 21, he leaves Boston and moves to Miami, where he becomes a full-fledged police officer. Again, people are like, wow, this guy is really legit, and he is really good at what he does. Kind of sketchy stuff starts to happen. He arrests a woman named Geraldine Smith and kind of begins an affair with her, which sketchy because you're using your power to get with somebody, and he was married, he had 2 kids, so not a good situation. And then a few years later, his mother actually dies. This is a huge stressor for him in life, and he kind of just starts to fall apart, starts abusing drugs and alcohol. His wife says he becomes extremely aggressive sexually, so not great. So a year later, after his mother passes away, he's actually removed from the warrants unit that he worked for, because they were like, dude, you're doing a bunch of crazy stuff. We need to investigate this. So basically, Middleton was writing to the prosecuting attorney asking him to go easy on people that he had arrested, including the woman that he was having an affair with. So obviously that's not okay, and a huge misuse of power. So the police department was investigating, and while they were investigating, he was suspended. The investigation took about a year, and after the investigation was over and his suspension was up, he actually was reinstated back into the warrants unit, which I'm just like, okay, you know this guy's done like sketchy stuff, and you're just gonna put him back into the position of power that you know that he should not have. So this is like one part of the story that I'm just like, oh, what? I'm guessing because like the Miami-Dade Police Department had to be probably fairly large. So he convinced a woman who worked at the police department that he was a priest of like this Cuban religion, and he convinced her to have sex with him. After everything has transpired between them, he finds her, kidnaps her, and attacks her, and does like horrible, brutal things to her that I'm not gonna mention here. But obviously this woman works for the police department. Like, I don't know what he thought was gonna happen, but she goes to the police and is like, hey, this guy attacked me, and he's arrested. So I'm not totally sure. This is where the timeline is a little bit fuzzy. There are some pieces of the puzzle missing for me, but he's released at some point and ends up assaulting a 16-year-old girl. So he's arrested for that and manages to get out of police custody like several times. I'm not sure if he was just getting out on bond, but he like makes a break for it like more than once, trying to like flee the state and get away with these assaults. Also, he commits this specific assault on this 16-year-old girl while he's in uniform. So he claims that he was off duty, but I've seen some conflicting reports that he was an on-duty officer and basically took advantage of his position to attack this young woman. So he is arrested in like September of 1989, and he is not actually convicted until June of the following year. So he's given 2 concurrent 5-year sentences, but I don't know if it's just because he's a police officer and he's like got his buddies that are looking out for him, but he ended up only serving 2 years of that sentence. So in 1993, he is released back into the general public, and it's so frustrating for me because it's like, if he would have served his full sentence, maybe the following events may have been prevented, maybe not, but you know, this kind of stuff just really frustrates me. It's one really frustrating thing about this case for me, is maybe these victims would have been spared if somebody would have followed through on making sure that justice was served for his 2 original victims. So I'm also not sure exactly how he meets his girlfriend, but he moves out to Colorado once he's released from jail and gets together with his young girlfriend, Yvonne Haley. And his like truck was already registered to the town that they end up moving to and living in. I just think it's really strange. Like, this is taking place in the 90s. So like, how did they meet each other? There's like some pieces of the puzzle that are missing for me. Anyways, so Yvonne Haley is working at a Sizzler with Buffy Rice, who is 18 years old and a waitress at the restaurant. Yvonne Haley picks up Buffy Rice in a parking lot, and Buffy is never seen again. It seems from what we know now that Yvonne Haley took Buffy Rice to Middleton's apartment where she was murdered and then put in a bag, taken to Haley's car, driven out into the woods and dumped. So the police are obviously notified like, hey, Buffy is missing. And they go to Bonnie Rice, Buffy's mom, question her about it. And in the meantime, Haley and Middleton get the heck out of Dodge. They're like, we're moving to Nevada. I still don't understand how justice was not served to Buffy, but we will get to that later. So when Buffy goes missing, we know that Yvonne was the one who picked her up in a parking lot, and eyewitness reports and surveillance video show Middleton carrying a huge bag with something inside, which now we believe must have been Buffy's body. During the investigation, car carpet fibers that matched the same fibers as are in Haley's car were found inside the bag, along with carpet fibers that matched the carpet fibers from Middleton's apartment. So it seems as though Middleton and Haley did kill her. However, I'm not sure if the police just didn't follow through, but they're able to get away, basically. Middleton and Haley flee to Reno and basically get the heck out of Dodge. So when Middleton and Haley arrive in Reno, they do a few things. So Middleton gets a job as a cable guy, thus the cable guy killer, and they rent a storage unit, which kind of becomes the main crime scene for the crimes that they end up committing. Spoiler alert, it gets worse. So Middleton helps install a cable system in Thelma DeVilla's home, and of course, like, she trusts him, and I think that if I were in her position, I would totally trust that the cable company would do their due diligence, make sure that they're not sending a convicted rapist into my house. Unfortunately, she had no idea, and Middleton kind of gets a feel for the place, scopes it out, scopes Thelma out, and later, Thelma is seen getting into a light-colored pickup with an African-American driver and a blonde-headed white passenger, which we know now are Middleton and Haley. She's also spotted at a nightclub with a African-American man, who we now know is Middleton, and she just kind of disappears from her apartment later that night. And we know that later in this week, Middleton goes and asks for a larger storage unit because he just has more stuff to store. Yikes. So a few months go by, no one has seen or heard anything from Thelma, and the case kind of goes cold. Like, police are like, I don't know, like, this is so random, and they have no idea that all these sightings have happened of Thelma with Middleton and Haley. So in November, Middleton actually calls the police because someone had broken into his truck. So there's kind of a little bit of a paper trail here where we know now what car Middleton drives, where his address is, where he's working. I'm not sure why, like, if you know that you're killing people and, like, you're a serial killer, serial rapist, you would call the police. Maybe this was just to be like, see, I'm not afraid of the police. Like, I'll call them if someone breaks into my truck. And it also makes you think, like, what was so important that was in your truck? A little bit strange. So a few months later, this is like 6 months after Thelma's disappearance, Middleton kidnaps Kathy Powell, who was an elementary school teacher, and takes her to the storage unit at 8:06 p.m. So we have the logs, we have the video of him going to and from the storage unit, so we know basically exactly when he took these women there and when he was coming back and forth. So the next day, Middleton visits the storage unit locker like 5 different times throughout the day, and we have no idea what he was doing in there. He will not talk about what, was going on, but we know it was not good. And this is where the whole story kind of starts to fall apart. Their cover is kind of blown. So Middleton, we know, was extremely methodical. He was really trying to cover up his tracks. It seemed like he was a really smart guy. We don't know his exact IQ, but he did have a high IQ. So he's kind of like covering the tracks, making sure to keep things on lock. And he was a police officer, so like he knows what they're looking for, His girlfriend, Haley, kind of messed everything up for him. So they go back to Kathy's apartment and steal a bunch of stuff, I think to try to make it look like a robbery gone wrong type of thing, because they know she went missing 2 days ago and people are going to find out, like, she never shows up for work. They're going to report her missing. So they steal like a TV and a bunch of electronics, and they take it to the store and they sell a bunch of it. They also, Haley uses Kathy's credit card to buy a stereo. So the police are like, you haven't been seen in 2 days and now your credit card is being used. Interesting. So they have on video the stereo being loaded into the back of Middleton's truck, and they have him on video at the storage unit, going back in and out. So it's like, obviously, that doesn't look good if you're using somebody else's credit card, and they have on video, like, the last known footage of them. That's not good. So another day goes by, and Kathy Powell is officially listed as a missing person, as she did not show up for work, which was, obviously unlike her. She's a school teacher. So the police go to her apartment, they find all these appliances missing, she's nowhere to be found, and they're like, interesting. So this day, Middleton did not visit the storage unit at all. And like, that's really weird because every day he's like visiting the storage unit like 4, 5, 6 times a day. So the next day, it seems like he goes to the storage unit because he's like, the police are onto me. They're going to catch me. I've got to get rid of the body. So a couple days go by, and unfortunately, police discover the body of Kathy Powell. Unfortunately, they find her in a dumpster. Actually, homeless person was like going through the dumpster and found her. So that's like, I can't even, literally not even imagine what that would be like. Fortunately, the storage locker place had video of this all going down. They have video of him loading the body into the back of his truck and driving off with it. So this would become like super key evidence later in the trial. So the police are like, we are going to search this guy's storage locker. So they obtain a warrant, but before they can get to the storage locker, Middleton and Haley go back to the storage locker several times for like long periods of time and basically bleach the whole thing. So the police get there, they execute the warrant, they're collecting evidence, and Middleton is he like knows he's gonna get caught. So he's trying to think of like, how do I get the best outcome of this? Like, I know I'm gonna go to jail, so I'm gonna try to strike a deal with the DA. And the DA was like, dude, are you joking? Like, you're obviously guilty. Why would I? So basically, Middleton's like, I'll get a lesser sentence and I will plead guilty to grand larceny and theft and all this stuff. But he maintains, he's like, I'm innocent. I did not kill her. Everything was consensual and she choked herself on accident. That was the excuse that he tried to come up with, which I feel like is the dumbest excuse in the world. Like, he's apparently so smart. That's the best he could do, is like, oh no, she strangled herself. So I didn't know what to do. I panicked and I got rid of the body. Okay. They obtained a lot of evidence, including evidence of a firearm, an illegal firearm. So they're able to arrest Middleton for the possession of the firearm. Meanwhile, they are basically putting together this like special task force, and they're like, we are going to take this dude down. Like, he's going down. After searching the storage unit, they find like all kinds of evidence in there that has Thelma and Kathy's DNA like all over it. They're also able to get DNA evidence from Middleton that matches all kinds of evidence they found on the bodies. So like, hook, line, sinker, this dude's going down. So Middleton pleads guilty to possession of the firearm and he is sentenced to a year in jail. And during this time, the police are like, as soon as this guy gets out, we are going to take him down. And if you'll remember, Buffy is still declared missing. They have not actually found her body yet. And unfortunately at this time, her body is found like literally out in the middle of the woods. And this is when the police obtain the evidence of the carpet fibers and from the car and Middleton's apartment. And they're like, oh, like connecting the dots of like all these other people that have gone missing. And it's Middleton seems to be like this, thread between all of them. There are also hair samples that are on the body that match Middleton like exactly. So it's obvious that like Middleton killed Buffy. So the Montrose district attorney, he actually decided we're not going to be filing charges against Middleton because it's too expensive, is basically it. They would have to extradite him back to Colorado. And they were like, it's just too expensive. We know he did it, but we're not going to press charges, which I'm just like, okay, so you're just like not going to give justice to this person because it's just too expensive. Like, so they're like, we're just going to wait because he's going to go to trial for these other 2 murders in Nevada. And then maybe at some point we'll press charges against him for this murder. It's like, okay, they've got Middleton kind of like nailed down, but like, what about Yvonne Haley? So Yvonne Haley meets the police in a coffee shop for like a little interview, and she's immediately like, I had nothing to do with this, and I will take a polygraph test to prove that I had nothing to do with this, and I'm so willing. Like, you set the date and I'll be there. So the police are like, sick, this is great. Like, you're gonna be able to tell us all this, missing information, because like, they have the DNA evidence, they have the storage locker evidence. But it's like, what actually happened between them missing and their bodies being found is like, kind of a mystery. Like, what actually happened? So they schedule the polygraph test and they come to pick her up and she's like, MIA. So the police are like, okay, maybe she just forgot. So they set a second date. They go to pick up Haley and again, she's made a run for it. They actually find her daughter, who had just tried to commit suicide. So it's actually, this is totally separate, but it's just kind of crazy how the timing worked out. They go to pick up Haley for this polygraph test and end up saving Haley's daughter's life. So that's kind of insane. So they finally get Haley to like sit down to take this polygraph, and she's like, I just can't do it. Like, it's just, I'm not emotionally prepared. And I'm just like, okay. So she's like, I'm not prepared to answer the questions. And so the police have like no idea what her actual involvement is in this, other than that she was present, it seems, in the disappearance of Thelma when Thelma got in the car with them. So they are interviewing Middleton, like trying to get him to confess. And Middleton's like, I had nothing to do with this. It was, complete accident, but I have no idea what you're talking about. I didn't murder anybody. And this is kind of, his story kind of starts to fall apart, like the longer and the more times that they interview him. Like there's this one interview that was 9 hours long, and he really starts to like slip up, like his whole, story is just like totally falling apart. So at this point, he still denies that he's killing anybody, but he does admit that he's been taking women back to the storage unit to have sex with them. So the Reno investigators, they've got like this task force, and they're like really going hard. Like they're going back to Miami and like investigating his past in Miami, and they see like, oh my gosh, he was a dirty cop and he was like raping people, and he basically got off. Like he only had to serve 2 years. Like that's nothing for the stuff that he did. They're interviewing his ex-wife, who is like, dude, he's literally crazy. Like he was the most amazing guy, and then he just snapped and became like an insane person and was hearing voices. So they're interviewing all his old coworkers, they're interviewing his family, they're interviewing his victims of the initial crimes, and they're finally like, we have enough evidence to put this guy away, like, for life. So they decide that instead of trying him separate times for all the crimes, they're just gonna like do it all at once. They charge him with 2 counts of first-degree murder, grand larceny, and kidnapping. So he is formally charged, and the trial doesn't honestly take very long. Like I've seen a lot of these like big profile cases take years and years and years and years and years. And while this did take a couple years from start to finish of the trial, it really was not as long as I expected for it to be. So he pleads not guilty to everything, like a complete and total dingbat. So obviously the jury is not convinced. In fact, one of the jurors is like, I want to see the dump site, which I'm just like, David, I don't know why you want to see that. They take the whole jury, like the whole courtroom, gets up, goes on a little field trip to where one of the bodies was dumped, and the jury is like totally convinced. So the jury reaches their decision, and Middleton is found guilty on all counts. So 2 counts of first-degree murder, 2 counts of kidnapping, and a charge of credit card fraud. Also larceny, just as like a little added bonus. So he is sentenced to death, and he is still alive. He was sentenced in 1997, and he actually has appealed like a bajillion times, and every single time the judges are like, dude, are you joking? Like, you're never gonna get out. His most recent appeal was in 2017, and he was immediately denied by the judges. So he was charged with the 2 murders in Reno, but they've never actually charged him for the murder of Buffy Rice, which is extremely unfortunate. I don't understand why the DA there has not gone forward with extraditing him. I know that it obviously will not change his outcome, as he is like sentenced to be executed, but I think that the closure for the family and friends of this woman, like, she deserves justice just as much as the other victims. And so it's upsetting to know like he hasn't served his day in court for what he did to Buffy, and he's getting away with that. So obviously he's not the only person who was involved in this, but Haley was also, his girlfriend was very involved in this, helped him kidnap these women, and she would not tell her side of the story. She maintained her innocence. So she was sentenced to jail. I'm not sure how long. I actually couldn't find that information. It was very sketchy and kind of focused on Middleton. They didn't really focus on what happened to Yvonne Haley after all of this. But she was found guilty of 2 counts of kidnapping, and she only served 8 years. She was released in 2003, which I just think is ridiculous. Like, you just basically got away with helping your boyfriend kill all these women. I don't understand. I don't know if she was being forced to help him, if she was being abused or being threatened with hey, you have to help me with this or I'm going to kill you. But if she was, she never said that I could find publicly or in court. She just pled the 5th in court, which is just I can't believe that she only got 8 years and was just let out, and now she's just out living her life. Meanwhile, these women lost their lives, and she played a huge role in that. So I don't know, this whole case kind of just frustrated me when I was reading it. Like, I can't imagine for Buffy's family and friends how that feels, for them to still not have closure, still not have justice for their friend and their daughter, their family member. And I can't believe, like, it feels like another case where, you know, law enforcement didn't, you know, totally follow through. Our justice system kind of failed in that letting him out early. Just because you're a model citizen, I feel like, in prison doesn't mean that you should just get released back out into the world with everybody else. Because obviously people do stuff like this all the time, and, you know, it's just unfortunate. It just really makes you think, like, if this guy had served, you know, the full sentence for his crimes in Miami, would he have done the things that he did? And would these women have, you know, been in a different place, different time, wouldn't have, you know, been victimized by this person? It just really makes you think. And of course, like, rest in peace to these victims. It's so sad to read through all the documents. You know, these women were just trusting this guy, and I also, like, can't believe that this cable company just, like, didn't do their due diligence. I don't know if he lied. Like, it's really difficult to find information on this case. There's just not much out there, but I don't know if he just lied about, you know, his criminal history or what, but, like, I can't believe they would send someone who was, like, convicted and found guilty of rape into a woman's home. You know, if he wouldn't have had this job, maybe, you know, these innocent women wouldn't have been murdered. Like, it's just crazy to think about, and the things that they went through before they died. Like, out of respect for them, I don't want to, like, get into, like, many of the details, but it, you know, it's just horrific. Like, they did not deserve what happened to them. Nobody deserves that, but it just really makes your stomach turn when you think about somebody like an elementary school teacher who is, like, helping teach our children goes through this horrible thing just because she wanted to have her cable fixed. Like, it's just really sad. So let me know your thoughts down below. What do you think? Do you think Yvonne Haley should have served more time? Do you think that the kidnapping charges were enough? And I'm gonna try to find any information about if there's, like, a petition or something to try to get charges pressed against him for the murder in Colorado, because I still think it's so ridiculous that he has not been held accountable for that. Anyways, that's all I have for this one, guys. Stay safe, leave a comment down below, and let me know what case you guys want to hear about next. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.